She laughed. Seriously? You recorded our fight? That's illegal. When I mentioned it, I said, check again. When her lawyer confirmed we're in a one-party consent state and the recording was admissible, the laughter turned into tears. I, 31 male, just got served eviction papers for my landlord Natasha, 38, for violation of lease terms and creating a hostile living environment. Thing is, I've been her dream tenant for 3 years. Never late on rent, fixed minor stuff myself, kept the place spotless. So what changed? I started dating her sister. Yeah, I know how that sounds, but hear me out. I rent the bottom unit of a duplex. Natasha lives upstairs with her husband Keith. Her younger sister Valentina, 29F, and I met at a neighborhood barbecue 6 months ago. We hit it off, started dating. Natasha seemed cool with it at first, even joked about keeping it in the family. But 2 months ago, something shifted. Natasha started complaining about everything. My TV was too loud, it wasn't. My friends visited too often, twice a month max. My car was parked slightly crooked, barely noticeable. Then last week, she demanded I break up with Valentina or move out. The conversation went like this. Natasha, this isn't working out. You need to choose, end things with Val or find a new place. Me, that's not legal. You can't evict me for dating someone. I'm not evicting you for that. I'm evicting you for lease violations. Me, what violations? Noise complaints, unauthorized guests, damage to property. Me, none of that is true and you know it. She smirked. Prove it. It's my word against yours. I have 3 years of documentation as your landlord. Who do you think a judge will believe? That's when I pulled out my phone and stopped the recording I'd been making. See, Natasha had been getting increasingly hostile in our interactions, so I'd started recording our conversations. Not to trap her, just to protect myself. I have this entire conversation recorded, I said. She literally laughed in my face. Seriously, you recorded our fight? That's illegal. You just gave me another reason to evict you, illegally recording me without consent. My lawyer's gonna love this. I said, check again. She was so confident. Recording someone without their knowledge is a crime. You're going to jail with that, and I'm definitely keeping your security deposit for damages now. We're in a one-party consent state, I told her. I can legally record any conversation I'm part of. Her face went pale, but then she recovered. Doesn't matter. No judge will care about your little recording. I want you out in 30 days. Well, we'll see about that. Update 1. The entitlement has reached astronomical levels. After our confrontation, Natasha went on a campaign to make my life hell. First, she changed the Wi-Fi password. We share internet as part of the lease agreement. When I texted asking for the new password, she replied, "Internet is for tenants in good standing only." I reminded her that internet is included in my lease. Her response? Sue me. So I did exactly what she suggested. Filed a complaint with small claims court for breach of contract. Also bought my own internet service and deducted the cost from next month's rent with documentation. Then she started the 3 a.m. maintenance checks. Suddenly she needed to inspect the water heater in my unit at 3 a.m. Tuesday. Check the furnace filter at 2:30 a.m. Thursday. Test the smoke detectors at 4 a.m. Saturday. All technically legal since she gave 24-hour notice each time, but obviously harassment. I recorded every interaction. Each time she'd make comments like, "This would be so much easier if you just moved out." Val deserves better than a renter anyway. You know I can make this stop anytime you want. The kicker was when Valentina came over for dinner. Natasha stormed down, pounding on my door. "You have an unauthorized overnight guest." I opened the door while recording. "It's 7 p.m. She's here for dinner." She's not on the lease. She needs to leave. Me, guests are allowed according to the lease. Not that guest. I forbid my sister from entering this property. Valentina stepped into view. "You can't forbid me from visiting my boyfriend." Natasha lost it. "You're choosing him over family? I gave you everything. I paid for your coding boot camp. I let you live with me rent-free for 2 years. And this is how you repay me? Dating my tenant? That doesn't give you ownership over my life, Nat. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police for trespassing." She actually called them. 2 officers showed up, listened to both sides, looked at my lease, and told Natasha that Valentina had every right to be there as my guest. Natasha screamed at them that they were taking his side because he's a man and threatened to file a complaint. The officers documented everything and left. I have their card and incident number. But that wasn't even the peak crazy. 2 days later, I got a letter from a lawyer, not about the eviction, but a cease and desist, demanding I destroy all recordings of Natasha because they were obtained illegally and constitute harassment. I forwarded everything to my lawyer buddy, Jerome. He laughed so hard I could hear it through the phone. She really doesn't understand one-party consent, does she? Keep recording everything. Update 2. Court date arrived faster than expected. Natasha showed up with her lawyer, looking smug. I showed up with Jerome and a folder of evidence 2 inches thick. Her lawyer opened with the eviction grounds. Noise complaints, no documentation, unauthorized guests, lease allows guests, property damage, 0 evidence, and illegal recording of his client without consent. Jerome stood up. Your Honor, my client has been documenting harassment by his landlord through legal recordings in our one-party consent state. We'd like to present them as evidence. Natasha's lawyer, objection. Those recordings were made without my client's knowledge. Judge, counselor, are you aware of our state's recording laws? The lawyer paused, whispered to Natasha, then, we'd like a moment to confer with our client. You could see the exact moment Natasha's lawyer explained she'd been wrong about the recording laws. Her face went from smug to shocked to furious. She started arguing with her own lawyer right there in court. The judge reviewed my recordings, my documentation, the police report, and my lease. Then she turned to Natasha. Not only do I find no grounds for eviction, but these recordings demonstrate clear harassment and retaliation. The tenant was within his legal rights to record these conversations, and they paint a disturbing picture of landlord harassment. But here's where Natasha's entitlement went supernova. She stood up and interrupted the judge. He's dating my sister. That has to violate something. It's emotional distress. It's inappropriate. I don't feel safe with him living below me. The judge, ma'am, who your tenant dates is not grounds for eviction unless specifically stated in the lease. Is it? Well, no, but then sit down. The ruling, not only was the eviction denied, but Natasha was ordered to 1. Restore internet service immediately. 2. Cease all harassment. 3. Pay me $1,800 in damages for breach of contract and harassment. 4. Limit inspections to reasonable hours with 48-hour notice. Natasha stormed out screaming that the system was rigged and she'd appeal. Her lawyer just looked tired, but she wasn't done, not even close. Update 3. Natasha went nuclear. Since she couldn't evict me legally, she tried to force me out through pure chaos. First, she filed a restraining order against me, claiming I was stalking her by recording our conversations. It was denied within 24 hours since I literally lived below her and was recording in my own home. Then she tried to sell the building. Listed it on 3 different sites as tenant-occupied investment property, motivated seller. I found out when potential buyers started knocking on my door asking to see the unit. I politely informed each one that I had a lease for another 18 months and wouldn't be moving. The listing disappeared after a week. But the real insanity came when she convinced Keith to confront me. This 45-year-old accountant who'd never said more than hey to me in 3 years suddenly turned into a tough guy. He cornered me in the driveway. You need to leave my wife alone and get out of our lives. Me. I'm just trying to live in the apartment I pay rent for. You're destroying my family. Valentina won't even talk to Natasha anymore because of you. That's between them. I just want to be left alone. Keith then grabbed my shirt. Listen here, you little... You're assaulting me. On camera, while I'm recording. He let go immediately, realizing the driveway security camera was pointed right at us. Then he said something that explained everything. You don't understand. If Valentina marries you, she'll get the inheritance instead of Natasha. Their grandmother's will says the first granddaughter to marry gets everything. Natasha was supposed to get it when she married me, but the old lady died before updating the will. It's worth over $400,000. There it was. The real reason. I called Valentina immediately. She had no idea about any inheritance clause. She called her mom, who confirmed it. Their grandmother's will had this bizarre clause about the first granddaughter to marry receiving the bulk of the estate, but since Natasha married Keith after Grandma passed, it was still up for grabs. Valentina was furious. Not about the money, about the deception. Natasha had been sabotaging every relationship Valentina had for years, always playing the protective big sister. Now we knew why. Final update, everything imploded spectacularly. Valentina confronted Natasha with the recording of Keith explaining about the inheritance. Yeah, I gave her a copy. Natasha tried to deny it, then justify it, then finally admitted she'd been protecting Valentina from gold diggers while trying to figure out a legal way to claim the inheritance herself. Their mom got involved. Turns out, she knew about the will, but thought both sisters were aware. When she found out Natasha had been hiding it and sabotaging Valentina's relationships, she was livid. But here's the karma. Valentina didn't even want the money that badly. She offered to split it with Natasha 50-50 if she'd just stop the craziness. Natasha refused, demanding 80% because she was the older sister and deserved it more. While they were fighting, I was quietly documenting every continued violation of the court order. Natasha kept attempting surprise inspections, shutting off utilities for maintenance, and sending me fake violation notices. I recorded everything, kept every text, saved every email. Jerome filed a lawsuit for continued harassment, breach of quiet enjoyment, and violation of the court order. This time, we weren't playing around. We asked for serious damages and an injunction. Natasha hired a different lawyer, the first one dropped her, who tried to argue that I was provoking her by continuing to live there. The judge shut that down immediately and reviewed my new evidence. The result: $5,000 in punitive damages, $3,000 in emotional distress damages, all my legal fees covered, $4,500, a permanent injunction against any contact except written notice for legally required maintenance. Natasha had 30 days to pay. She didn't have the liquid cash. She tried to refinance the building, but with a tenant, me, having a legal judgment against her, no bank would touch it. Meanwhile, Valentina and I got engaged. Yeah, it was quick, but when you know, you know. Plus, we both found it hilariously ironic given the circumstances. The inheritance clause kicked in. Valentina got the $400,000. Natasha absolutely lost her mind. She showed up at my door, crying and screaming that we'd planned this all along and stole her birthright. I just held up my phone, showing I was recording, and she ran away. She tried one last desperate move, sued Valentina for the inheritance, claiming undue influence from me. The case was thrown out in preliminary hearings. The judge noted that Natasha had hidden the will's existence from Valentina for 5 years and had no standing. With the inheritance money, Valentina and I bought a house. We offered to let Natasha out of my lease early so she could rent to someone else, but she'd have to pay me $10,000 to break it, the remainder of the judgment she owed, plus a lease break fee. She refused out of spite, so now I'm paying $1,200 a month to live in a place I never have to see while living in our new house. Natasha can't rent to anyone else, can't sell the building with me as a tenant with 14 months left on the lease, and can't afford the mortgage without my rent. She's trapped by her own spite. Last week, Keith filed for divorce. Turns out, he was only staying for the potential inheritance too. With that gone, and Natasha's behavior becoming increasingly unhinged, he bailed. She's now got divorce lawyers to pay on top of everything else. Valentina tried one more time to offer her sister an olive branch, $50,000 from the inheritance, no strings attached. Natasha's response was to call her a traitor and say she was dead to her. The recording that Natasha laughed about saying it was illegal? That recording has now been played in court 3 times, been submitted as evidence in 4 different legal proceedings, and basically destroyed her life. All because she was so entitled and so confident that she was untouchable. The moral of the story? Know your state's recording laws. And maybe don't try to control your sister's love life for money. That too. Also, if a tenant starts legally recording your conversations, maybe that's a sign you're being a terrible landlord. I still have 14 months left on my lease. Every month, I send that $1,200 rent check right on time. It's the best money I've ever spent.